The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, return, return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, return, return.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. My name is Margaret McFadden, and I will be your service leader this morning. Today you are the people of this congregation, and you are welcome as we worship together. Our mission in this church is to nurture each other, serve the community, and inspire action to heal the world. We are not the first people on this land, nor will we be the last. We acknowledge our connection to the web of all existence, honoring the past and preparing for the future. The stewardship of the original people preserved this place, and we seek to be respectful stewards for those who follow. Our opening words are number 434 in the Grey Hymnal. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. We light our chalice as a symbol of our connection to Unitarian Universalism around the world, and to mark our entry into this sacred time as we worship together. There, our candle. Please join me in our unison lighting chalice words. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. Our first hymn this morning is We Celebrate the Web of Life.
Number 175, We Celebrate the Web of Life. We celebrate the web of life, its magnitude we sing, for we can see divinity in every living thing. A fragment of the perfect whole in cactus and in quail, as much in tiny barnacle as in the great blue whale. Of ancient dreams we are the sum, our bones laid stone to star, and bind our future worlds to come with worlds that were and are. Respect the water, land, and air, which gave all creatures birth. Protect the lives of all that share the glory of the earth.
Our story for all ages today is The Water Walker, which is written and illustrated by Joanne Robertson and published by Second Story Press. Nokomis loved Nibbit, and Nibbit loved Nokomis. Rain or shine, hot or cold, calm, or wild. Every morning, like the women in her family before her, Nokomis hopped out of bed, and before doing anything else, she sang, Gichi Miigwech, Nibe, for the life you give to every living thing on earth. I love you, I respect you. But one day, a wise Ogama told her, in my lifetime, the day will come when an ounce of water costs more than an ounce of gold. What are you going to do about it? Like an arrow, his words pierced Nokomis's heart. She looked around. She saw how people were disrespecting the water, wasting it, making it unfit for life. Day turned to night, night turned to weeks, and Nokomis remembered the Ogama's words. A few moons went by, and then one night, Nokomis had a Bawagin. Early next morning, Nokomis called her sister and Kewik Nichis over for tea to talk about the responsibility to protect Nibi. 4 days later, Nokomis and the Mother Earth water walkers, as they came to be known, found themselves standing on the side of the road wearing sneakers. Nokomis carried a copper pail full of Nibi in one hand and a Migizi staff in the other. If no one noticed Nibi, maybe they would notice the water walkers. Maybe someone would ask why they carried Nibi in their copper pail. Maybe someone would be moved to protect Nibi too. Nokomis and the Mother Earth water walkers walked around all the Great Lakes in the St. Lawrence River. They walked every spring for 7 years. They prayed and sang to Nibi. They left Sema in every lake, river, stream, and puddle they met. They got up before the birds and went to bed when the Nokomis Gizes rose. Nokomis was interviewed on television, in newspapers, and on radio. She was even in movies, but big companies, politicians, and even her next door neighbors still did not feel the urgency to protect Nibi. What more can I do? Wondered Nokomis. A year later, by the Atlantic Ocean, Anichike had a Bawagin, which she shared with Nokomis as soon as she woke up. Nokomis shared the Bawagin with all the people she had met during her previous walks. Word spread fast across Turtle Island. Everyone began to prepare. Next thing you know, there were Kewik standing at each salt Nibi surrounding Turtle Island with a copper pail in one hand and a Migizi staff in the other, wearing sneakers. In the west, Nokomis and the Mother Earth water walkers set off from the Pacific Ocean, saying, Ngazi Chige, Nibi Onji, I will do it for the water. 1 year after a devastating oil spill, Nokomis and the water walkers set off from the Gulf of Mexico, singing to Nibi and praying for healing for Nibi. Water, we love you. We thank you. We respect you. Next, Nokomis and the water walkers set off from the Atlantic Ocean in the east. At the send-off, they walked barefoot on the rocks and the beautiful petroglyphs and sang to Nibi. Putting on their sneakers, they started out on the migration trail their ancestors traveled hundreds of years before. In the frigid north, the ice was 5 feet thick. Nokomis and the Mother Earth water walkers put Sema on the frozen Nibi, singing their thanks, respect, and love. Unga zichize ge Nibi onji. Saltwater tears filled the Mother Earth water walkers' eyes as the 4 salt Nibi met Lake Superior. One day, the 4 salt Nibi will be reborn as clouds and be carried home on the wind. Nokomis went through 3 knees and 11 pairs of sneakers walking for Nibba. She got her knees replaced and is at home resting up, taking the time to surf online for new sneakers. And every morning she puts down her sema for Nibba and sings her gratitude. She prays people wake up and realize that without Nibba, there is no life. And she continues to wonder, what are you going to do about it? That's the end of our story.
Thank you, Jim. Our meditation will be followed by a few moments of silence for reflection or prayer, and then we will hear a chant by Cindy Carey. The meditation words today are a poem illustrating humankind's basic need for access to the natural world. The Lake Isle of Innisfree by W.B. Yeats. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, and a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I must arise and go now, for always, night and day, I hear lake water lapping in low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core.
Like a tree I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower I will turn to the light. Like a stream I will flow round the stone in my path. Like a rock I will stand for what's right. Like a tree I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower I will turn to the light. Like a stream I will flow round the stone in my path. Like a rock I will stand for what's right. Like a tree I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower I will turn to the light. Like a stream I will flow round the stone in my path. Like a rock I will stand for the right.
Our speaker today is known to many of us. Irene Kay joined the church when she moved back to Canada from her congregation in Manchester, New Hampshire. She devotes her time to educating and encouraging people to adopt a plant-based diet for improved personal health a better environment, and reduced animal suffering. She is a certified plant-based chef and a member of the UU Animal Ministry. Her homily today is titled, There is No Planet B. Let us welcome Irene Kay.
In August of 1945, the citizens of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were obliterated by atomic bombs, and so began the Cold War. I was born 1 year later, in August of 1946, into a world forever changed by human actions. The nuclear arms race and the accompanying posturing, threats, and rhetoric from the United States and the Soviet Union brought the world to the brink of an unfathomable war in the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. During the late 1960s, while I was at university, there was a counterculture revolution happening. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, Woodstock, the summer of love. We were saying things like, live hard, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse. Why were we so cynical and contemptuous of our parents and the establishment? I think it's because we were the first generation to live under the existential threat of mutually assured destruction, that life on the entire planet could end in mere moments if one or the other of the superpowers pressed a button. And we baby boomers were only the first. Every child born since then lives under the same threat. In the midst of all of this came a glorious moment in world history. On December 24, 1968, the astronauts on the Apollo 8 spacecraft had finished their mission of circling the moon and were returning to Earth when they took the first photos of Earth by humans who were off planet. Our beautiful blue planet is suspended in the blackness of space and appears to be an Earthrise over the moon. As they took in the sight, one of the astronauts jokingly asked, "Do you think it's inhabited?" Once the photo was published, people around the world marveled at the beauty of our home planet. There were no countries visible, no cities, no armies, no nuclear missiles. There was talk of world peace, an end to international and sectarian warfare, and a truly global brotherhood of man on planet Earth. 2 years later, in 1970, the first Earth Day was organized and celebrated. Now we would see the citizens of Earth work in harmony to protect our fragile, precious world. So we all know how that whole world peace thing worked out. Over the past 50 years, along with wars, invasions, genocides, and coups, we have torn the tops off mountains, drained wetlands and swamps, altered the course of rivers and built dams, deforested huge swaths of land, and to quote Joni Mitchell, paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Our impact has been so profound that this era is being called the Anthropocene, the era of man, due to the irrevocable changes we have made to the planet's surface, air, and water. It began around 1945 with the nuclear arms testing that spread radioactive isotopes around the globe, atmospheric increases in carbon dioxide and methane, as well as heavy metals from leaded gasoline and pesticides such as DDT. It continued through to the end of the 20th century with post-war increases in energy use, industrialization, and globalization. By the end of the century, our global temperature was rising, species extinction was accelerating, and we had managed to pour more than 500 billion tons of concrete over the Earth, as well as altering 75% of land not covered by ice. A few weeks ago, 2 US billionaires took their toys for a ride up to the edge of space, that thin blue line of our atmosphere that protects us in our temperate Goldilocks home. Not too hot, not too cold. During television coverage of one of the flights, a compatriot of one of the billionaires said that he looked forward to the future of space exploration. He spoke of terraforming other planets and having 1 trillion, yes, he said 1 trillion, people working in good-paying manufacturing jobs out in space. Now, terraforming is what humans have been doing here on Earth for generations, clearing land for agriculture and digging irrigation channels. But we've now taken it to new extremes that are a threat to life on the planet. Rivers no longer reach the oceans because canals and aqueducts siphon off the water for thirsty cities built in the desert. Farmers along the rivers each try to take the biggest share they can, leaving nothing for the people and animals downstream. Hard rock mining, pulp and paper processing, and fossil fuel extraction operations create huge amounts of contaminated wastewater that seeps pollution into the earth and watersheds. Cattle and pig farms produce massive amounts of excrement that is held in retaining ponds that leak into rivers and streams. Particulate matter is released into the air by heavy industries and dust from farms and feedlots. While pre-industrial and subsistence societies live close to the land and see themselves as part of nature, colonial empires have been built on commodifying the earth and its inhabitants. After Europeans came to North America, animal skins were not valued for clothing or shelter, but became fashion items halfway around the world. Indigenous peoples everywhere faced genocide or forced resettlement away from their traditional territories. Others were abducted into slavery to grow cash crops for colonial settlers. European nation states were built by children and the poorest populations who worked in the coal mines that fueled the Industrial Revolution and the sweatshops it made possible. Canada's earlier colonialists came for timber and furs. Today, national and international corporations are ripping the Canadian earth apart for her minerals, oil, and gas. The billionaire space exporting buddy wants to take the same exploitative, extractive processes to any new worlds and remake them in the image of Earth. However, if he has his way, I would hazard a guess that he'll be supervising from here on Earth. So I talked a little bit about my generation and the angst a lot of us felt, but what about the youth of today? Not only do they live under the threat of nuclear annihilation, but they also stand to inherit an uninhabitable Earth. With the unmistakable evidence of climate change all around us, young people have been sounding the alarm, urging an end to the exploitation of the Earth before it's too late for all of us. When COVID-19 first hit us and we all went into quarantine, people made witty remarks that went something like this. Mother Nature is very displeased with you. Now go to your room and think about what you've done. Here's a short video by one young person who has done a lot of thinking. I warn you that there's one bleeped word early in the video.
There's something I would like to talk about. Our relationship with nature is broken. But relationships can change. The climate crisis, ecological crisis, and health crisis, they are all interlinked. We no longer see the links between them. We only see this far. So what will we do? My name is Greta Thunberg, and I would like to connect the dots. Because let's face it, if we don't change, we are f***ed. Millions have died from COVID-19. Zika, Ebola, West Nile fever, SARS, MERS. Up to 75% of all new diseases come from other animals. Because of the way we farm and treat nature, cutting down forests and destroying habitats, we are creating the perfect conditions for diseases to spill over from one animal to another and to us. The next pandemic could be much, much worse. But we can change. 83% of the world's agricultural land is used to feed livestock. Yet, livestock only provide 18% of our calories. The way we make food raising animals to eat, clearing land to grow food to feed those animals. If we continue, we will run out of land and food. It just doesn't make sense. The land requirements of meat and dairy production are equivalent to an area the size of North and South America combined, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. We have industrialized life on Earth. If we keep making food the way we do, we will also destroy the habitats of most wild plants and animals, driving countless species to extinction. This really sucks for us too. They are our life-supporting system. If we lose them, we will be lost too. In the words of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, for too long we have been waging a senseless and suicidal war on nature. And what about the climate? We know that we need to drastically reduce our emissions starting now. When we think about the villains of the climate crisis, of course we picture fossil fuel companies. But agriculture and land use together are about 1/4 of our emissions. This is huge. It doesn't have to be like this. If we change towards a plant-based diet, we could save up to 8 billion tons of CO2 every single year. We could feed ourselves on much less land, and nature could recover. Pandemics, loss of biodiversity, climate disruption, acidification of oceans, inequality, loss of fertile topsoil. These are all just symptoms. What they all come down to is the way we treat nature, the way we value nature. We need a system change. But we can fix this. Because we are part of nature. When we protect nature, we are nature protecting itself. And finally, the animals. Every year we kill more than 60 billion animals, excluding fish, whose numbers are so great that we only measure their lives by weight. What about their thoughts and feelings? Some animals plan for the future, forge friendships that last for decades. They play, they help each other. They show signs of what we call empathy. But 70% of the animals we farm live inside factories. In the United States, that number is 99%. Their lives are short and terrible. How will we be judged? It is heartbreaking to know all this, but it is also our opportunity. We know what we can do. We can change the way we farm. We can change what we eat. We can change how we treat nature. Some of us have lots of choices, while some have none at all. Those with the most power have the most responsibility, and most of us can do something. So, what will you do?
We've all heard about the flight or fight response, but psychologists have added a third, freeze. This is when we are immobilized by fear. We have options in how we're going to react to the climate crisis that's upon us. We can flee into an existential neverland, soothed with booze, drugs, food, or whatever. We can fight by denying, by refusing to accept the facts as presented to us. We can freeze, numbed by sadness, guilt, or grief. Or we can use this moment in time to become that fellowship of humanity envisioned so many years ago when we saw our exquisite blue planet for the first time. In this congregation, we have people who are working in all aspects of the climate movement. And we probably have some folks who are denying a little bit or feeling overwhelmed or numbed. Regardless of where you are today, know that your efforts, all of our efforts, are needed, and they're needed now. If you're already active, good for you. Do more. If you aren't active, start somewhere. Educate yourself on the issues and decide what you can do as an individual. Vote with your fork and eat a more plant-rich diet. Meat and dairy producers raise animals to make money, and if their products don't sell, they'll grow other food that people want to buy. Support local farmers markets and reduce transportation costs. Eat what you buy and compost the scraps at home or use the green bins that are in most communities. Food waste in landfills is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Retrofit your home with energy efficient doors, windows, and appliances. Be a green consumer and buy products that are kind to the environment and haven't been tested on animals. If you have money to invest, support companies innovating clean, renewable energy, or buy a mutual fund that doesn't invest in fossil fuels. Drive an electric vehicle if you can afford one. If you feel that your individual actions won't make a difference in the larger scheme of things, there's an African proverb that says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, you haven't been in bed with a mosquito. There's strength in numbers. Join a group that's doing what you feel called to do. Plant trees, clean up riverbanks and hiking trails, demonstrate and march with others to promote actions that will heal the earth. Municipal governments are responsible for water management and waste removal. Support what they do well and demand changes to what needs improving. Most importantly, in light of the Code Red for Humanity report from the United Nations, support provincial and federal representatives who will act with vigor to enact legislation that protects the environment and ends perverse subsidies and sweetheart deals with extraction-based industries. I'll close with a quote from Barbara Kingsolver while you take another look at Earthrise. Optimism is the only moral choice. It's an option, first of all, not a given. If you run out of hope at the end of the day, you always have the choice of getting up in the morning and putting it on again like a sweater. You have to keep trying to find hope. I think it's immoral to do otherwise, because the minute you say, I can't do a thing about it, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and it's beyond me to change it. The minute you say that, you're essentially saying, I'm going to stop trying. If you give up hope and stop trying to fix what's wrong, you're handing to your children and mine and everybody else's a worse world than the one you found. And I can't live with that.
Number 1064, Blue Boat Home. This is an old hymn that has been reimagined with new words by Peter Mayer and the piano accompaniment by UU Minister of Music, Jason Shelton.
Of the heavens in our beauty.
Lovely, Rachel. We've got a short announcement from Elizabeth Beckett, one of our Segway team leaders. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Many months ago, the board appointed a search committee to begin the process of bringing an interim minister to our congregation. Joanne Deere as chair, Mary Sully, Dale Shipley, and Gail Rapo did the work, and through a very arduous process, chose Reverend Jamie Boyce, who in turn chose us. Despite COVID restrictions, closed borders, immigration requirements, and severe storms in Detroit, Reverend Jamie Boyce arrived safe and sound on Thursday, driving into our parking lot at 5:20 p.m. to be welcomed by our President Barb Wallace and members of the transition team. Jamie is settling herself in her apartment and has already begun her work. Thanks to the search committee and the transition team, which is composed of myself, Joanne Deere, Marilyn Hunt, and Catherine Schuler, who helped facilitate this process. Also, thanks to our president, Barb Wallace, and our church administrator, Bruce McPherson, both of whom were instrumental to this successful outcome. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have some joys and sorrows to share. First of all, a sorrow. I'd like us to take a few moments of silence in support of Haiti, which has suffered another blinking earthquake. It struck yesterday, and they are going to be struggling with it for quite some time. So, as we extinguish our chalice and go forth, let us take heart from these closing words by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.